Marianne, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Leanne, thank you for having me today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks to the Facebook networking groups. That's how me and you connected. And I'm very, very intrigued to learn more about you and your story. So let's start off with an introduction for anyone who's meeting you for the first time. Let everyone know who is Marianne St Clair.
Wow, that's a really deep subject. I'm almost 60, so I could go a bunch of different ways. I'm a passionate woman about women and about healing from maybe trauma or whatever's holding a woman back from being her true, authentic, really luscious and juicy self. Because I think there's just this wonderful part of us inside that is covered up by so much of life's journey that is just waiting for us to tap into it. It's that, like I said, that luscious and juicy part of women. And so I have been a life coach for 23 years. I now call myself a muse and mentor. And what I do is guide women back into uncovering those beautiful parts of herself and feeling sexy, alive, and delicious in there.
I love everything that you're talking about. And that's exactly why I wanted you on my podcast, because we all have that luscious, beautiful woman inside of us, right? But like you said, a lot of the things that we go through in life can muddy it up. And we, as women especially, lose ourselves in that process. So definitely want to know more about you and your story and how you've become who you are. But every guest that comes onto my platform, we always go back, way, way back to childhood. My personal opinion, and a lot of other people have said this is scientific facts, that a lot of the shit that we go through during that time period, it really affects us as we grow and develop as human beings. So talk about what life was like for you as baby Marianne, adolescence too. Like, what did it look like for you? Relationship with your parents, whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
My mom had a stillborn, and she had where the umbilical cord was wrapped around us as babies. And so in 61, she had already had my brother, but in 60, she had full term. The baby died just a couple days before birth. Then my sister came along in September 60. My sister came along October 61, same umbilical cord. It was very traumatic, but my sister was born. So then the doctors told her no more kids, and my mom was scared. And back in those days, the doctors knocked you out. You were dropped off at the hospital. They put you totally under. They did whatever they did to you, and you came out with a baby. So she was scared, and she was scared during the whole pregnancy. So then here I come. My parents were using contraceptive. They were using rubber, and it didn't work. And here I am. So I felt unloved and unwanted from even conception. And so that played out to where I was colicky. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be born. So then I was daddy's girl. And then my parents got divorced, and I was sat down on the edge of the couch and told my parents we're getting divorced. And here's this long laundry list of things that you have to do now at 5 years old, and take care of your older brother and older sister. So I grew up right then and there. At age 5, I became responsible. I became this more adult-like little kid. Then one of my mother's boyfriends, she became a very Christian and was in the church. And so at that time, one of her boyfriends ended up molesting me. That had me very confused. We were camping.
How old were you when this happened?
I was about 6 to 7.
Wow.
But before that, so the first one was at around age 5, before my parents got divorced. I was molested by, my dad was in kind of like the Rotary Club. It was called Buyers and Sellers in South Florida. And so we had went for a pool party, and I was having so much fun that they said, why don't you stay? And I stayed. And that night he ended up coming in and molesting me while I was there at their house. Later, about another year and a half later, there was my mom's boyfriend. We were camping. I write about this in a book. It's about reclaiming my sovereignty And it's about, we think our parents are there to protect us. Well, my mom was laying one person away from me and she couldn't protect me. So through that, I was molested twice before the age of 8. And I became very responsible, caregiving, caretaking, and not taking care of what Marianne necessarily wanted to do for herself. I was always looking outside of myself, taking care of everybody else and becoming responsible. I don't know how deep you want me to go into any of it, but because I don't want to re-traumatize anybody through their own journey.
Right.
But what's really significant about mine, Leanne, is that a lot of people going through the trauma, it was very painful. Mine was very pleasurable. I liked the feeling. I've been on podcasts and so many of them are like, gosh, you're the only person I've ever heard that it was enjoyable. It was something that you hungered and thirst for. So I became promiscuous. I carry sexual energy from the time I was born. I'm a Scorpio, I just have that and it's there, but I didn't have the experience of it being horrible. It was pleasurable. Now, did it get me to disconnect from my body? Yes, because I wasn't able to handle all those. As kids, we don't have the synopsis or neuroplasticity or whatever to understand that at that age.
Yeah.
So.
I appreciate you so much for going there. I had one guest on my podcast and she said the same thing. She was sexually abused as a child and the feeling that she knew it wasn't right, but also the fact that it felt good, especially as a child, that's got to be like one of the biggest mind fucks that you can go through. And it's interesting as what I've heard, because I'm not a survivor of sexual abuse, but I am a survivor of domestic violence. What I have heard is that something that a lot of trauma survivors of sexual abuse go through is two very extremes. One, like you said, you become this promiscuous person. You're very hypersexual. The opposite, which is one of my guests, was like she completely shut down sexually and was completely disconnected with her body to the point that you couldn't even touch her because that would trigger her. So it's interesting to see like the dichotomy of both sides. I'm curious to know, and this is kind of like the perfect segue to the next part that I want to go into. Being that you are a survivor of sexual abuse, especially from childhood, how did that affect your mental health as you got older, as you were married and had kids? Like, how did that play a role in your adult life prior to you going on your healing journey?
I think one of the key things there is that I was looking for validation. I was looking for somebody to love me, like me, and if I could please them, then they would like me. So it wasn't like, I'm enough, here I am. It was like, if I do this for you, then you will like me. So it always played kind of, as you said, a mindfuck in me, where it wasn't until later on that I flip-flopped that. And I can tell you, I'm all about pleasure. Pleasure is everything that I talk about. I come from the place of my pleasure now. I don't do it unless it's bringing me pleasure. And hopefully this byproduct is their pleasure. But, it isn't a hell yes for me, then it isn't happening.
Yeah, I love that motto. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a no.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, before we move on from the whole trauma aspect, did you ever speak up and tell someone what happened, and how was that process for you?
So I didn't really speak up until much, much later, but because I was going through, they knew it. And they were advised by mental health workers and people at that time. I don't even think psychology was so big at that time. It was just in infancy at that time. And I think what my mom said is that they knew something was going on with me, but they were told not to bring it up unless I brought it up. So here they knew I needed help. They knew that I needed something, yet nobody took me to a counselor. And they said, don't bring it up unless I brought it up. So how does a 7-8-year-old know that they need to ask for help? It was pleasurable. It wasn't like somebody beat me. I knew it was wrong, but yet I didn't know the ramifications. I didn't have that awareness. It was a much different time back then that you didn't talk about sex. That's why I just feel so passionate about normalizing how we talk about sex, that we have places to go to ask questions. I had already started my healing journey, but it wasn't until in my late 30s, early 40s that I went and told both my parents, that I went and sat down with my dad and stepmother, that I went and sat down with my mom. And my mom had already gone through, she has her degree in mental health, but my dad and stepmother, they were like, they had no idea. It was kind of like a shock to them, but it was my truth. And I had to speak my truth. And then it really wasn't until in my 50s that I spoke up to my husband. He's an asexual, and he decided what our sexual life was going to be. And it wasn't until I spoke up and really exercised my voice and said, this isn't for me, and really spoke and said, I don't care if we get divorced, if we do, but I have to be a fully alive woman, and I can't pretend at all for anybody. And I will not.
What I'm hearing from you is that there's such power in using our voice to speak up, no matter how uncomfortable it can make someone feel. And I think that's something that a lot of survivors of any type of abuse really struggle with. And I'm curious to know, being the woman that you are and everything that you've gone through, we're like just scratching the surface of the life that you've lived. What would you say to someone who has gone through a traumatic experience? They don't know where their voice is, but they're trying to find it, but they're scared to speak up, and they want to ask for help, and they want to do the work, but they don't know where to start. What would be some advice that you would share with them?
One is find somebody, a professional first and foremost, whether or not that's a coach who specializes, whether or not that is a counselor, somebody that is trauma informed that can begin to help you build that muscle. Because if you go to your girlfriend, if you go to your parents, if you go to somebody, you might be shamed. You might be made so guilty that if you said something, it would hurt Uncle Harry's feelings, or it would crush the family, or it would do something. Your voice matters, and you need to be able to start getting that confidence, getting that security inside of you that you matter before you go and really exercise it. If you want to go, just make sure that you're okay no matter what they say, no matter what they try to shame you or do, that you know your truth and you are good with finally speaking your truth. So it can rattle feathers, but I was okay with no matter what the outcome was. And I think that's the point you have to get to, is knowing that. And we hear a lot of times that all this is an illusion. And so just remember that there is reality that we live every day, but you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I just love these women who are coming forward right now. One is going up against President Trump, and she was on the stand and being told that her truth wasn't the truth. Well, nobody knows it but you. And there's going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who don't believe you. There's going to be people who try and crush you. There's going to be people. That's why I'm saying form your team around you. So that they can hold you when those times come, when you are broken and you are sad and you are whatever, that you have people that are going to hold you until you are okay.
Absolutely. I think advocating for yourself should be the number one priority. And I know for me in my journey of going through probably the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through, my life was almost taken from me a little over 2 years ago from someone who I thought was my forever, right? Going through that and feeling like I pretty much lost myself because I didn't know who I was in that relationship. And I really wanted to get to know Leanne by herself for the first time. That really started when I spoke up, when I asked for help, when I worked with professionals, when I started this podcast. That's what it was birthed out of me wanting to really start to use my voice to take my power back. And that's why I love featuring guests like you who are so about advocacy and speaking up and not letting the shame and the trauma and all the shit that we've gone through just continue to perpetuate that cycle of staying quiet, because that doesn't help anyone. It only hurts them.
Yeah. And you're living right now in a time like none other.
Yep.
We as women, or those with, I say, that have a pussy or a vagina or a vulva, because I don't like to identify. We're in a time where it's everybody, because I deal with men who have been sexually abused and they have their trauma. And there's women, there's transgender, there's queer, there's all of the spectrum of all of us. And it is a time to really own who you are. Mm-hmm. Own your power. Own that you make a difference. Own that you are significant and that you are amazing. And we'll have these things in life that come up, like you with your trauma, and something could happen to me tomorrow. I've been through a journey with my daughter who has been very ill, and I had to go through it with the medical community where I sought help. It's another trauma. I have put PTSD because of what I was subjected to, how I go for help. And here I'm made to be the one who's causing everything with her. Trauma comes in many different forms. And it's to know, no, I'm loving my child. No, I'm trying to listen to my inner drive that says I'm a fully sexual, sensual woman, and to stay shut down. Sexual energy is our most vital, potent energy. It's the energy that creates babies. And when you shut that down, or when it is shut down because of a trauma, you are taking like a bottle and the cork is on the top and there's all this lusciousness inside. And if you don't get that popped, and I say like champagne, to where it can all come out and just the world can experience it and you can experience yourself, there's just so much that is suppressed and repressed, to where I went through burnout because I was not listening to myself.
And I think like today's generation, it's so much more open to having these uncomfortable conversations compared to, say, when you were growing up and that older generation. And I'm curious to know, because you're all about sexuality and liberation and intimacy and pleasure and all of these things, which is a very taboo topic still, even though we're destigmatizing the stigma around it. I'm curious to know, as you being a professional in the field, why do you think there's such a taboo around talking about that sexuality, intimacy, and why did you decide to make it your career, especially after going through the trauma that you went through as a child?
Because I feel that, like what I just said, our sexuality and our sexual energy is the potent energy. It's our life force. It is the chi that runs through us. If you look through the medical and you see the serpents running up the symbol, that's the Kundalini energy. If we don't allow that to rise and move through us, we are keeping our life force down. And so what I feel is that, how can we reach our fullest potential? How can humanity reach our fullest potential if we're not letting our sexual energy come and move through us? So I made it my life's work because I used to sit there and listen to like my mom or my sister and everybody say, you can't talk about that, Marianne. You can't talk about that.
Because it made them uncomfortable.
Right. 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 So when I told my mom, who's 85 years old, I said, Mom, look at this. I said, look at all these women and look at what they're saying. I would suppress it back down and I would make them feel comfortable. And now I let them sit in their discomfort, because how are we all going to rise? How are we all going to? Because this is the main place that they keep us in control. They keep us suppressed to where we're good little worker bees. We're not in our power. And who is they? The rich. You know, you look at, and I use this analogy, you look at people like Jeffrey Epstein. What did Jeffrey Epstein do? He mined the sexual energy of young females. And that made this little man become so wealthy, is because he used sexual energy. It's called sexual transmutation. It's in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, chapter 11. Read it. Most people have read that book and have no idea what sexual transmutation is. It is when you can take and you can harness and cultivate and harness your sexual energy. And then instead of just like having an orgasm and not even thinking, you put that to an intention, like you're putting it to birthing a baby, putting it to birthing a business, growing your business, whatever it is. And so I feel that through this liberation, through this allowing people to fully understand what they have within them, only allows them to become more of what they are meant to be.
That's the perfect segue to the next part of my question. I want to know, what are some ways that, especially us as women, I know you work with a lot of people, but my target audience is mainly women, millennials, and Gen Z. What can we do to tap back into our sexual energy if we've lost it? And especially as someone who may feel shame, may feel embarrassed, may feel they were brought up to not talk about it, someone who's also been a trauma survivor, what steps can we take in order to tap back into ourselves and reclaim our sexuality?
Self-care, self-love, and begin some sexual practices. Even if you touch yourself, even if you begin to put on some music and just move your body. Feminine energy is movement, moving your body, and begin to feel and get in your body and out of your head. Begin to allow your body to speak. Begin to awaken your senses, taking that time looking at it, smelling before you begin to taste it. Make sure that you're even experiencing it on multiple levels. Those things are the beginning and awakening your feminine sensuality and body.
You got to stop and smell the roses, as they say, right?
Yeah. We're taught just ignore our bodies, get in motion, go, to the point where when we get a headache, we just take and numb it. We get up in the morning, we drink coffee, we drive the same way, we go to work, we listen to everything outside of our bodies. Your body is your greatest gift to you. Get back in it. Begin to experience life through your body, not your robot going through life.
And also seek that guidance and that support by working with a professional like Marianne. You know, I think we're so accustomed to wanting to be the strong one, to do everything on our own and to take on life. And we don't need to ask for help. Asking for help is like weak, but no, absolutely not. We're able to change the narrative in our lives. And it's okay to say, I'm fucking struggling right now and I need someone to help me. So definitely seek out some support. That's what helped me in my own journey as well.
I have an amazing program. It's called the Passport to Pleasure, and it's Own Your Odyssey. It's an amazing program for women to reconnect to her body. All the things that I just spoke about, that's what we do in sisterhood. We have everybody from, Gen Zs all the way to my age and even older. I have 70-something-year-olds that are just now awakening and coming home to their bodies. And that's where I say there's no better time than right now. Yes. It's an amazing time to be alive, especially as a woman.
I love that. Definitely want to link that in the episode show notes. Some people can check it out. And being that you are a coach, I would love to get some insight around people who are either married or in relationships and they're struggling with their sex life. That intimacy, that pleasure, having that conversation can be detrimental to a relationship, right? Depending on how you approach it. Say a client comes to you and they're like, my sex life is horrible. I don't know what the fuck to do. What would be some advice that you would tell them on how they can maneuver that conversation in a way that doesn't really like break down the other person or make them feel like shit about themselves in the process?
Every situation is different. And that's what I honor is my situation is going to be different than yours. It's going to be different than your girlfriend's. So taking advice from your girlfriend in this category is not always the best thing, right?
Right.
Because she's heard all your trauma. She's heard all your stuff. She's heard your shit and that.
She's got a biased opinion.
Yeah. And she's either going to fuck him, So first and foremost, we need to begin to have a conversation with yourself first and find out what it is that you really want. You may not even know that right now. I tell people all the time, where did we learn about sex? We learned it in the backseat of a car or on the football field, or we learned it in porn that we watched. We didn't learn how to get into our feelings, to know what kind of sexual blueprint we have. Do we like kink? Do we not like kink? Do we like sensuality? Do we like to just fuck? There's all these different nuances, but if you don't start exploring your own, how are you ever going to tell your partner? Are you ever going to tell them what you like? Are you going to tell them how to touch you if you don't touch yourself and if you don't even know? So we think that we should just know this shit. Well, okay.
Or we think that our partner should just be able to like read our minds.
Oh, why isn't he coming over? And why isn't he knowing that I need an hour of foreplay before I even can warm up and know, to get my body moving, when a lot of guys are just get in and get out, the performance based. So there's this whole plethora of experiences. And then there's even more. Scratching the surface of beginning to understand your body and having a conversation with your partner that says, you know what, I'm going on a journey. It's for me. Because remember at the beginning of this, I said, I used to be all about them. And what I teach now to making first is make pleasure a priority. It needs to be one of your biggest priorities in life, and pleasure the full gamut from smelling the roses all the way to full on sex with multiple partners, whatever it is. You have to begin to understand what your pleasure is. And I make sure that when I'm maybe having intercourse or giving oral sex or having multiple partners or whatever it is, that it's for my pleasure. And if I'm not feeling it and you're just over there wanting something, okay, and it isn't happening for me, then you have the right to say no, whether or not you're married or not, exercising your voice.
Yes.
And you're going to probably appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I say that all the time on my podcast. When it comes to this whole healing journey, personal development, everything starts and ends with you. And it's very cliche, but it's so true. If you really think about it, and every aspect of our lives, like I said before, we are the author. We create the narrative of what we want. And it is okay to say, I don't like this. I don't want this. This is not going to continue. Like we said before, also, them feeling uncomfortable, that's a them problem. We don't need to take that on. We don't need to take that burden on to be like, because it's making you feel some type of way, I'm just going to cater to you. No, fuck that. Absolutely not.
1000%, because there you just gave away your power.
Period. Yes.
End of discussion. And don't think that they feel that little and they can find out how to take that power again and take it again. And it isn't to be in a power struggle. These are all moments for you to exercise more of who you are. We've bought into something that is called marriage, and it's the biggest mindfuck there is.
Yeah.
Telling you, because it's a institution. What other institution do we know that are crumbling? The education system, the medical system. So here we've bought into this Puritan way of control that says, you need to get married. Oh, that's the best thing. And you have to do it for life. And if you're not, you're a failure. There's some people that can really move through life and they do this dance and it's beautiful. But for the rest of us, get the hell out. If it isn't working, to sit there and think that you're a failure because of their problem. No, you're a survivor. Take your own and become a very empowered, sovereign woman that says, nobody's going to treat you like that. Oh, fucking no. I'm going to be treated like I deserve to be treated. And the first person who's going to treat me like that is myself.
Y'all heard it here first. I knew this conversation was going to be good, but she's just like validating everything that I preach on this podcast. Like, yes, ladies and gentlemen, you fucking matter at the end of the day. And no period. Like, that's a full sentence.
Yeah. And your yes is a full sentence.
Yep.
Your hell yes is, oh my gosh, you mean I can do that and be happily married? I can exercise my voice. And there's so many things that it's all a journey. And I'm not saying that I'm against marriage. I'm against their power. And it's a matter of, are you going to be your biggest advocate? Are you going to be the one who says, my pleasure is my priority? And if you want to be on the journey with me, then let's go play. If not, then I'm sure there's somebody out there that will.
They can exit stage left gracefully. I have another question in regards to like couples. A big issue when it comes to sex life is cheating. Cheating can make or break. Some people decide they want to work it out. Some people are like, no, that's a red flag for me. I'm not going to continue. How can we take our power back and be able to heal through something so traumatic like cheating in a relationship? How can we do that in a healthy way that's not going to basically ruin the relationship for life?
Yeah, I had a lady come to me the other day and I worked with her and she was like, I have a great marriage, wonderful marriage, but I want to go do this sensual massage and I want to have this very sexual, sensual experience, but I only want to do it for me and I don't want to tell my husband. I'm like, okay, let's look at this. How would it be if he did the same thing? Oh no. That wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, so then you need to check in and have the conversation, because if you're not willing to give him the same freedom that you're asking for, then it's a no.
Yeah. You can't be a hypocrite.
No, well, you can't go and do something in life that you're not willing to give the same. So I always say that we have to be willing to, it's not easy. All of this relationship and intimacy, what is it that you stand for? What are your values? What do you want in life? And there's a lot of people who don't ever want to get married. There's a lot of people who want to have a boyfriend. So in answer to your question, when somebody breaks that agreement, you have to know where your boundaries are. And then when that boundary is crossed, you can forgive just like you would want to be forgiven. But then there comes that big word, trust. Maybe you both learn where this boundary is. Maybe you never discussed that before. Maybe you never even said, okay, we're not stepping outside. Maybe you think it's just should be known. That goes back to your thing a little bit ago. We think they should know what we want in our bodies. Well, I think everything needs to be a conversation. We need to be able to have these things, having a conversation on the other side of it, going, okay, well, you broke this boundary. What made you want to go do that? Do we need to reevaluate our relationship? But all of this where we take so much and internalize it and shame, blame, all of that is just opening up another trauma response pattern where you can get a professional and work through that and be able to fall in love again. You can reset boundaries. You can say, oh, hell no, because you want something more than what I'm willing to allow in the relationship and move forward. So it's not a one size fits all, but yet there's work that can be done. There's of learning about yourself. All of this is about self-realization and self-actualization.
Like I said before, everything starts and ends with us, right? Like I know for me, being someone who's been cheated on many times in the past, I now know that that is a hard limit for me. If it happens once, I'm not giving you a second chance anymore because I know who I am and how I react to that situation, right? So It just comes with the life experiences that we go through.
Yeah. And you can have that conversation with the next relationship you're in. You can say, if you ever get to that point, please, let's open up and have conversation and understand where you're at. And this person maybe is lighting you up in a way that I'm not now, because we do have that honeymoon phase. We have that honeymoon phase where everything is like ooey gooey and we change who we are to make the other person happy and everything. And then all of a sudden we lose ourselves and we wonder why.
Where were you when I was in that relationship?
You know, we're swiping left, swiping right. We're not even going into really people now, especially in your generation, a lot of, and I don't want to say everybody, but it's so easy now, you know, not to get into the hard stuff.
And that's why I have purposely, like, I've been celibate for 2 years since I ended that relationship. I'm not going on the dating apps because I just know it's a lot of bullshit on there. And thirdly, and most importantly, like, I'm so focused on the relationship I have with myself. I don't want to share my time with anyone right now. I want to continue being selfish because I'm enjoying my own company for the first time in my life.
And once you learn who you are, boy, then you can really meet that person.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm excited for that. I'm open to that, but I'm not desperate for it like I was before.
Yeah, because we want to be loved. Well, do you love yourself?
Exactly. Ooh, that's a good question to journal on. I want to know, thinking back to your whole life journey, everything that you've gone through, what would you say is the most important thing you've learned about the woman that you have become today?
I have a sense of freedom and liberation now that I know who I am. I know that no matter what other people might think, oh my gosh, there's Marianne. She's putting a picture of her in her bra on social media at 60 years old. You know what? Well, I hope you can do the same thing. If you feel comfortable in your body, no matter the size, shape, or scars or whatever, that you know that you're beautiful, because I know I'm beautiful. I know that, and here I'll give you a really good shocker that'll shock everybody who's watching this, okay? I love to get on a stage and I love to give this wow moment that you have to know who you are and that you can be comfortable enough that you can go, oh my gosh.
Yes.
I can be
yes.
raw and real, and I can let myself shine no matter what my shape is, what my size is, what my scars are, that I love me through and through. And I'll put this picture on social media as much as I'll put any other picture on social media. So I love doing that, you know?
I love that for you so much. I think that, like you said, that's the ultimate definition of freedom. And I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. But so many times we only care about what they are going to think, how they are going to feel. Fuck that, man. Like, let this episode be the permission that you need to hear. You fucking matter. Your happiness, your freedom, your liberation at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. That is the true meaning of happiness.
It's not about them. There's so many women who have eating disorders. Instagram has caused all of this craziness on, do we have a fat enough butt? Do we have a small enough waist? Do we cinch it enough? Do we wear the right kind of makeup? Do we whatever? That we're losing our sense of self because we're trying to be somebody else.
Yep.
And what I say is, you're never going to be happy until you can be happy with all of you.
That's a mic drop moment. I want to know, since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me what thriving means to you.
Thriving is being a fully liberated woman who follows her pleasure. I feel that when I am listening to that inner connection with my pussy, and my pussy is saying, Marianne, yes, it's a hell yes. And Marianne, it's a no. And when I'm listening and fully connected to my inner guidance, then the sky's the limit. It doesn't matter if something is my shadow. It doesn't matter if it's a bump in the road. It doesn't matter if I'm out there and I don't have my wallet and can't pay for my gas in my car. It doesn't matter. I'm in my pleasure zone no matter what, because it's how I respond. It's how I choose to live life. And this is my journey, and I choose to live it as an orgasmic life, having the most epic adventure no matter what's happening.
That's the perfect definition of thriving. I couldn't have said it better myself. Think back to your childhood self, whatever age pops up for you. What is one piece of advice you would tell baby Marianne?
Own your sexuality. Own your sensuality. Be that magnetic, amazing, juicy, luscious woman that you feel on the inside. It should not matter who's judging you from the outside. Just make sure that you dress the way you want to dress. Make sure you speak your mind. Make sure you love yourself first and foremost, and then have as much fun on this epic journey that you can.
Because it's going to take you on some twists and turns, right?
Yeah. Like when I was sitting there and I had doctors coming and them wanting to take my daughter away from me and telling me that I was Munchausen and I was causing what was happening to her, and just the whole world seemed against me. And your precious child is like your inner child, and they're wanting to take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. Your inner child is inside of you. And no matter what is going to happen, you are okay. You will be okay. Just remember who you are. You are magnificent. There's only one of you. Let your light shine.
2 more questions. This next one could be a heavy one, but we have uncomfortable conversations, so I think you'll be fine. If you had the opportunity to say something to the men who abused you, what is something that you would tell them?
I would tell them to ask. Consent is first and foremost. Always ask before you touch another person's body. I don't have hate. I don't have anger. I don't have resentment at all. I feel like, yes, I was young, but I also know that they had their own journey and maybe they were abused. Maybe they had trauma. I feel that I can love them even to this day. And I feel that it's just important to always remember there is another person over there and that we need to ask and get permission before we touch someone.
That is so powerful. That's definitely what I would call having a growth mindset, especially being a survivor of, like I said, whatever kind of trauma you went through. Reaching that level of forgiveness maybe is difficult, especially for me and what I went through. It's been a journey. It's something I don't struggle with as much now, but if you were to ask me that question 2 years ago, it would be a completely different answer. But I think it's so beautiful to see that you're able to have that type of mindset, using the word love to someone who hurts you. That's powerful. And I think that helps with reaching next levels of healing. But again, like we said, everyone's journey is different. We're not expecting you to, some people don't ever reach that level. Some people carry that hate and that anger in their heart, and that's okay too. But I think it's beautiful to be able to see someone who's gone through some pretty traumatic shit, but be able to have that type of mindset. It's like, I can hold space for you because you were probably hurting too.
Yeah. And I feel that love is really this thing that it comes from the inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I love myself enough to not hold that. I don't want that festering in me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that. Like you said, it's okay if that's where they are. It is a journey. This whole life is an opportunity for you to find all these fragmented parts of yourself where you gave away power, where someone took and made you feel shameful or guilty of your body. This whole journey is about reclaiming those parts of you that you gave your power away. And then it's like redefining, refinding, reimagining who you are as a whole sovereign being.
Y'all, I'm going to listen to this episode like over and over and over again when it comes out, because there's just so much goodness in here. I have one final question before you plug in how we can follow you. In the far future, when you're no longer on this living earth, someone needs to sit down and write about you. What do you want them to say about Marianne?
Just as you said that, this wave of emotion came up. Oh, let's get real now.
Yeah.
She gave me permission to love myself. She gave me permission to sit in the uncomfortable. She gave me permission to love and want and be okay that I wanted something that everybody felt was wrong or not for me. And I think I really want to be known for pushing the edge and the limit of what it is to be a woman and to stand in our power and to love ourselves and to live a sexy, hell fucking yes, amazing life, and then let it reflect back to you. I say, love the world and it'll love you.
I mean, I couldn't think of a more perfect way to end this conversation. It was so juicy. I love that word. I'm going to start using that.
Yes, luscious and juicy.
Luscious and juicy. I love the energy. I love your story. And I know, like I said, this is just the surface of who you are. And I know people are going to want to know more about you, want to work with you, follow you. So please let my audience know, what are you working on? Plug in your website, your social media, all the juicy and luscious goodness.
So I'm passionate about women who resonate that they are a muse, really calling forward the energy of the muse. You see the witches and the sirens and all these other archetypal of coming And I'm very passionate about muses. We are the inspiration of the future. Women in our sensuality are the key to bringing the unknown into the known. So with that being said, I have the program, the Passport to Pleasure, which is a woman's journey to owning her odyssey. And that is a 6-month program. Why is it 6 months? I feel that we really have some turning off these old patterns, beginning to tune into who you really are, into that liberated lusciousness, and then beginning to turning it on, then turning it up so that you can feel comfortable walking, taking off your wig, doing any fucking thing you want to do in life. That is calling you from inside of you. And then the other thing is in May of 2024, I have what's called the Cruise with a Muse, and it is a 7-day luscious journey. I have the most amazing speakers where we are going to be liberating ourselves to where we will get off of that ship and there will be this woman who comes alive that you didn't even know existed before the journey. So the Cruise with the Muse and the Passport to Pleasure are my 2 signature programs. You can follow me on all social medias. I'm mainly on Facebook and LinkedIn, but Instagram, I'm trying to be more, So if you want to find me, it's Marianne St Clair. I have a podcast that is the C-Suite Muse. And why C-Suite is because it's all of those powerful people that need inspiration these days. So we talk about all these taboo subjects and things as far as in business and in personal lives. And then my website, mariannestclair.com.
I want to just thank you for the work that you're doing, for giving us permission to come back home to ourselves. Like we said in the beginning, we can tend to lose ourselves in the process, being a wife, being a mom, being a worker, being an entrepreneur, all these titles that we hold on to. But I think at the end of the day, what's so important and what I took away from this episode is just like the importance of finding us and really knowing who the fuck we are at the end of the day. So thank you for giving us permission to do that. We're going to link all your information in the show notes, and I'm just so excited to continue watching your journey. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Leah, for having me. Every one of these podcasts, I just unfold and open up more. So you were amazing, and I look forward to following you on your journey also.
Yes. Thank you so much.
For the work you're doing.
Thank you. Such an honor.